The message came from space on a Tuesday morning when most people on Earth were drinking their coffee and getting ready for work. Admiral Jack Morrison was standing in the Pentagon's big meeting room with other military leaders when the strange signal arrived through channels that Earth's best scientists had only dreamed about. Just months before, the alien words appeared as floating light in the air above the table, then changed into English through some technology that nobody understood. President Helen Carter sat at the head of the table, her hands gripping the edge as she read the words that would change everything for humanity. "People of Earth," the message began with a cold voice that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You have been watched. Your kind has reached the point where you can travel between worlds, but you still live only on one planet. The Galactic Council has talked about you for 17 of your years. We have decided that your species is not good enough to join us." The room became very quiet. General Paul Roberts, the top military man in America, looked at the president with worry in his eyes. The message kept going, listing all the things the council thought were wrong with humans. They said people were too violent, always fighting over land and resources, and wanted to spread to too many places too fast. "You have 3 days to get ready to leave your planet," the message continued without any emotion. "Your species will be moved to a farming world called Kepler 442b, where you will work for the Council. If you fight back, we will kill all of you. This is final." Dr. Lisa Graham, the president's top science helper, looked at her computer screen with shaking hands. The numbers and data showed that this message had really come from far beyond the edges of their solar system. Multiple alien ships had sent it at the same time, all perfectly coordinated. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "this is real. The quantum signature is unlike anything we've ever seen. This isn't someone playing a trick on us." President Carter stood up slowly, her eyes never leaving the floating message. The words hung in the air like a death sentence for every man, woman, and child on Earth. 8 billion people going about their normal lives, not knowing that their entire future had just been decided by beings they had never met. "Get me the Defense Secretary, the head of NASA, and every leader of our allied countries on secure phones," she ordered. "We have 3 days to figure out what to do." Admiral Morrison had been in the military for 30 years. He had fought in wars, commanded ships, and made hard decisions. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The aliens weren't asking for surrender or negotiation. They were simply telling humanity that their time as a free species was over. "General Roberts," the president said, "what are our options?" The general looked at the data on his screen. "Ma'am, we don't know anything about their technology or how many ships they have. We don't even know where they are exactly. But based on how they sent this message, they're far more advanced than we are." Dr. Graham pulled up more information on her tablet. "The message came through quantum channels that we barely understand. If they can do this, their technology is probably hundreds of years ahead of ours, maybe thousands." Outside the Pentagon, people were walking to work, kids were going to school, and life continued as normal. Nobody knew that in a room deep underground, the most powerful people in the world were trying to decide if humanity should fight or give up. "What about our space program?" asked President Carter. "The Mars colony, the moon bases, our defense. Satellites? We have some weapons in space," Admiral Morrison replied. "But they were designed to fight other humans, not aliens who can travel between stars. We're like people with bows and arrows facing an army with machine guns." The president walked to the window, even though it only showed the underground parking garage. She thought about her daughter, who was in college studying to be a teacher. She thought about all the children playing in playgrounds right now, not knowing that aliens wanted to take them away from their homes. "They called us unsuitable," she sighed quietly. "They said we're too aggressive, too territorial, but what are they doing right now? They're threatening to kill 8 billion people if we don't become their slaves." Dr. Graham looked up from her computer. "Ma'am, there's something else. The farming world they mentioned, Kepler 442b, it's real. We've studied it through our telescopes. It's habitable, but it's much smaller than Earth. If they moved all of humanity there, We'd be crowded together with no room to grow. And they'd control everything, added General Roberts. Our food, our water, our technology, we'd be completely dependent on them. Admiral Morrison had been quiet for a while, thinking. Now he spoke up. Ma'am, I need to say something. In my 30 years of service, I've learned that sometimes you have to fight even when you can't win, because some things are more important than survival. The president turned back to the table. What do you mean? I mean that maybe dying free is better than living as slaves. These aliens think they can just take us away from our home because they're stronger than us. But strength isn't everything. Sometimes the smaller guy wins because he fights harder. Dr. Graham shook her head. Admiral, with respect, this isn't a movie. These are real aliens with real technology that we can't match. If we fight, they'll destroy us? Maybe, Morrison replied. But maybe not. We don't know everything about them. We don't know their weaknesses. And we don't know what humans can do when we're pushed to the edge. The president sat back down. Tell me about our capabilities, everything we have. For the next hour, they went through Earth's military resources. The space stations, the experimental weapons, the new ships that were still being tested. It wasn't much compared to what the aliens probably had, but it was something. We also have something they might not expect, said Admiral Morrison. We have the home advantage. We know this solar system better than they do, and we have something to fight for. General Roberts nodded. Every human who's ever lived has called Earth home. Our ancestors are buried here. Our children are growing up. Here, this isn't just a planet to us, it's everything. The president looked around the table at these people who had dedicated their lives to protecting America and its allies. Now they were being asked to protect all of humanity. They gave us 3 days, she said. How do we use that time? We prepare, said Admiral Morrison. We get every weapon, every ship, every soldier ready. We call our allies and tell them what's happening. We make sure that if these aliens want to take our home, they're going to have to fight for it. The meeting ended with orders going out to military bases around the world. Phone calls were made to presidents and prime ministers. Scientists were pulled from their labs to work on projects they never thought they'd need, but most importantly, a decision was made. Humanity would not go quietly into slavery. They would fight for their home, their freedom, and their right to exist as they chose. The aliens had made one mistake. They thought that being stronger meant they could do whatever they wanted. But they were about to learn that humans had something they didn't expect. They were about to learn that sometimes the smaller guy wins. 2 days and 20 hours had passed since the alien message arrived when President Helen Carter walked into the White House press room. Every major news network on Earth was broadcasting live, but this time the cameras weren't just recording for human audiences. The message would be sent back to the aliens who had demanded humanity's surrender. The room was packed with people from every nation on Earth. Prime ministers, presidents, generals, and scientists had all flown to Washington for this moment. Behind President Carter stood the flags of every country, united for the first time in human history against a common threat. To the Galactic Council, she began, her voice clear and strong, we have received your message. We have thought about what you want us to do, and we say no. Admiral Jack Morrison stood with the other military leaders, watching as the president delivered humanity's answer to beings who lived among the stars. In the past 3 days, he had worked with generals and admirals from around the world to prepare for what might come next. You call us not good enough to join you, but then you offer to make us your slaves. You talk about how violent we are while threatening to kill us all. You say you have the right to judge us while trying to take away our basic right to live free on our own world. Commander Jake Peterson had returned from Mars just 12 hours ago when the emergency recall went out to all space personnel. His face was marked by years of living in the harsh environment of humanity's first colony on another world. Those colonies had been humanity's first steps toward the stars, steps that had apparently brought unwanted attention. Let me tell you what humanity really is, President Carter continued. We are not perfect. We have fought wars against each other. We have made mistakes. We have struggled to find our place in the universe. But we have also shown something that your council seems to have forgotten. We can learn, we can grow, and we can fight for what we believe is right. Dr. Amanda Foster watched from the science section of the room. For the past 3 days, she had barely slept while coordinating with research teams across the globe. They had been studying the alien message, trying to understand the technology behind it, and preparing humanity's response. What they had learned was both amazing and terrifying. Your message talked about our desire to expand and explore, the president said, and for the first time she smiled slightly. You were right about that. We do expand. We push forward into new places. We explore what we don't understand. We refuse to stay in one place just because it's safe. And that's exactly what makes us human. The president paused and looked directly into the camera that would carry her words to the stars. You gave us 3 days to prepare to leave our home. We used that time differently. We prepared to fight. Earth's answer to your council is simple. If you want our world, come and take it. The broadcast ended, but the real work was just beginning. In military command centers around the world, plans that had been made in desperate haste were now being put into action. Admiral Morrison walked quickly to the main operations center where General Patricia Hughes was coordinating the defense of the entire planet. All stations report ready, sir, announced Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Walker from the communications center. He had been working for 48 hours straight, making sure that every military unit on Earth could talk to each other instantly. In the 3 days since the alien message, humanity had accomplished something that many thought was impossible. Every nation on Earth had agreed to work together. Countries that had been enemies for decades were now sharing their most secret weapons and technology. The threat from space had done what no human leader had ever managed to do. What's the status of Operation Prometheus? Admiral Morrison asked. General Hughes looked at the displays showing military forces around the world. Phase 1 is complete. Every space-capable vessel has been fitted with the new weapon systems. The Mars colony has been evacuated, and those ships are now part of the defense fleet. The moon bases have been converted to weapons platforms. Dr. Foster's team had made breakthrough after breakthrough in the past 3 days. By studying the alien transmission, they had learned new things about physics that Earth scientists had never imagined. This knowledge was being used to create weapons that pushed the limits of what was possible. Phase 2? Morrison asked. All ground-based defense systems are online. Every major city has been evacuated to underground shelters. The orbital defense platforms are in position. We're as ready as we can be. Captain Steve Miller was aboard the USS Defender, one of the experimental ships that had been rushed into service. His crew had trained for space combat against other human forces, but now they were preparing to fight beings from another world. The ship's new weapon systems had been installed just hours ago. Sir, reported Lieutenant Sarah Brooks from her position at the tactical station, we're detecting movement at the edge of the solar system. Multiple objects, very large, moving toward us. The aliens were coming, exactly as they had promised. But they would not find the helpless planet they expected. In 3 days, humanity had transformed from a divided species into a united force ready to defend their home. This is Admiral Morrison to all units, his voice carried across every communication channel. Remember what we're fighting for. We're not just defending Earth, we're defending the right of every human being to live free. We're defending our children's future. We're defending everything that makes us human. The alien ships were still hours away, but preparations were complete. Every weapon that humanity had ever created was now pointed toward space. Every soldier, sailor, and pilot was ready to give their life to protect their home world. Dr. Foster looked at the data streaming in from deep space monitors. The alien fleet was massive, but humanity was not defenseless. The weapons they had created in 3 days were unlike anything that had ever existed. They had taken Earth's knowledge of physics and pushed it to its absolute limits. They think we're primitive, she said to her assistant. They think our technology is weak, but they don't understand what humans can do when we're desperate. President Carter watched the preparations from the White House Situation Room. Every screen showed military units moving into position, ships launching from hidden bases, and weapons charging up for the coming battle. In 3 days, humanity had become something new, something that had never existed before. "Ma'am," said her aide, "the alien fleet will be here in 6 hours." The president nodded. "Then we wait, and we show them what happens when someone threatens Earth." Around the world, 8 billion people waited in shelters, knowing that their fate would be decided in the next few hours. They had been told that aliens wanted to take them from their homes and make them slaves. But they had also been told that their leaders would fight for them. The message had been sent. The preparations were complete. Humanity's answer to the Galactic Council was ready to be delivered not with words, but with actions. The aliens had demanded surrender. Instead, they would get war. The alien ships appeared exactly when they said they would, materializing in space beyond the moon like ghosts becoming solid. Captain Steve Miller watched from the bridge of the USS Defender as his sensors went crazy with readings that should have been impossible. 37 ships, sir," reported Lieutenant Sarah Brooks from the tactical station. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she read the numbers. "Each one is about 3 kilometers long. I've never seen anything like their design, and they're not using any kind of engine we recognize." The alien vessels hung in space like sleeping giants, their hulls dark and smooth. They didn't look like any ship that humans had ever built. There were no visible weapons, no engine exhaust, no lights. They simply existed in the void, waiting. The lead ship began broadcasting on every frequency at once. The message reached every radio, every television, every phone on Earth simultaneously. "Humans of Earth, your refusal has been recorded. You have chosen death over relocation. Begin evacuation of your planet immediately, or face the results of your pride." Admiral Jack Morrison's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth Command. "All units, this is Control. Execute Operation Prometheus. Show them what humanity can do." What the Galactic Council didn't know was that Earth's apparent weakness was a carefully planned deception. The past 3 days had seen the largest military preparation in human history. Every ship that could reach space, from orbital defense platforms to the vessels that carried supplies to Mars, had been fitted with weapons that pushed the limits of known science. Captain Miller felt his ship's new quantum torpedoes power up. The weapons used technology that Dr. Foster's team had developed by studying the alien transmission. Tactical, lock onto the lead ship. Let's show them how humans say hello. The USS Defender fired first, its experimental weapons shooting through space at speeds close to light itself. The Council ship's protective shields flared blue and white as they tried to absorb the impact. Across the battle area, dozens of human vessels opened fire. At the same time, Dr. Tony Richardson was monitoring the battle from the deep space array on the far side of the moon. He watched in amazement as the alien formation began to break apart. "They're not used to this," he reported to Earth Command. "Their movements suggest they've never faced serious resistance before." The Council ships finally returned fire, their energy weapons cutting through space with frightening accuracy. The human vessel USS Harmony exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking 97 brave souls with it. But for every human ship that was destroyed, 2 more appeared from hidden positions throughout the solar system. Lieutenant Commander Kelly Watson commanded the stealth ship Silent Hunter, which had been hiding in the shadow of an asteroid for 6 hours. Her targeting computer locked onto a Council vessel that was firing on the orbital defense platforms. "This is for every person on Earth," she whispered as she pressed the firing button. Her ship's antimatter missiles found their target, and the Council vessel erupted in a cascade of exotic energy that lit up the darkness of space. The explosion was so bright that it could be seen from Earth's surface, a new star that burned for 30 seconds before fading. The battle raged for 6 hours without either side able to claim victory. The alien ships were incredibly advanced, but they seemed confused by human tactics. They fought like they expected their enemies to give up quickly, not like warriors who were defending their home. human ships used the asteroids and debris of the solar system as cover, appearing from hiding spots to fire their weapons before disappearing again. The aliens had superior technology, but the humans had something more important. They had desperation and the knowledge that losing meant the end of everything they loved. Commander Jake Peterson led a squadron of fighters in a suicide run against one of the larger council vessels. His small ship dodged between the alien weapon beams, getting close enough to fire directly at what looked like an engine port. The explosion that followed sent the massive alien ship spinning out of control. "All fighters, this is Jake," he broadcast to his squadron. "These things can be hurt. They're not gods, they're just bullies with bigger guns." The tide of battle began to turn as more human ships joined the fight. And the Mars colony vessels arrived from the outer system, their hulls scarred from the long journey but their crews ready for war. The moon bases launched wave after wave of missiles that overwhelmed the alien defenses, but it was the orbital defense platforms that did the most damage. These massive weapons, built in secret over the past 3 days, fired beams of pure energy that could crack the hull of even the largest council ship. They had been designed using principles that humanity had learned from the alien transmission itself. The battle continued. One transmission cut through the chaos of war. It came from the damaged alien ships, and for the first time, the voice didn't sound cold and mechanical. "Impossible," the alien speaker said, and there was something like fear in its words. "Your species was listed as primitive. Your technology should not be capable of this resistance." Admiral Morrison's reply was broadcast on all frequencies so every human and alien could hear it. "You made one mistake, Council. You threatened our home. And humans don't give up their home to anyone." The alien fleet began to pull back, their ships moving away from Earth and toward the outer edges of the solar system. They left behind the wreckage of 7 vessels and the bodies of who knew how many alien crew members. But they also left behind something else. They left behind the knowledge that humanity would fight. Captain Miller watched the retreating ships from his damaged bridge. The USS Defender had taken heavy damage, but she was still flying. Half of his crew was wounded, but they were alive. More importantly, Earth was still free. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Brooks, "we're getting damage reports from the fleet. We lost 18 ships, but we hurt them worse than they hurt us." The first battle was over, but everyone knew it wasn't the end. The aliens would be back, probably with more ships and better weapons. But something had changed in that 6-hour fight above Earth. Humanity had proven that they could stand against the galaxy's most powerful force. Dr. Richardson continued monitoring space for signs of the alien fleet. "They're regrouping near Jupiter," he reported. "They're not leaving the solar system. They're planning something." Admiral Morrison's voice came through the communication system one more time. "All units, maintain positions. This was just the beginning, but we've shown them that Earth doesn't surrender. We've shown them that humans fight for what's ours." The first battle between humanity and the Galactic Council was over, but the war for Earth's freedom had just begun. 3 weeks after the first battle, the second wave of alien ships appeared in Earth's solar system. This time there were over 300 vessels arranged in a formation that stretched across millions of miles of space. President Helen Carter stood in the newly built war room deep beneath the White House, watching holographic displays show the approaching threat. "Ma'am," reported Colonel Greg Thompson from the intelligence section, "we've been studying the wreckage from the first battle. What we found changes everything we thought we knew about these aliens." The holographic display shifted to show the inside of one of the damaged council ships that had been captured after the battle. The corridors were smooth and clean, clearly designed for beings much smaller than humans. But it was the command center that made everyone in the room feel sick. The alien ship's bridge contained dozens of glass containers, each one holding a different kind of creature. Some looked like giant insects, others resembled fish with arms and legs, and still others were so strange that human eyes could barely understand what they were seeing. But they were all connected to the ship through cables and wires that went directly into their bodies. Dr. Rachel Stone, The scientist who had led the examination of the alien wreckage stepped forward to explain what they had discovered. The council isn't what we thought it was. Each ship contains representatives from dozens of different species, all working together in perfect harmony. But here's the important part. They're not working together by choice. The image zoomed in on one of the glass containers, showing the sophisticated machinery that was connected to the creature inside. These beings are linked together through technology. Their individual thoughts, their personal desires, their own free will has been taken away and replaced with a collective mind that makes all the decisions. Admiral Jack Morrison felt cold fear run through his body. You're saying they're not really thinking for themselves? Exactly, Dr. Stone replied. The Council isn't a government made up of different species working together. It's a single mind that has absorbed dozens of species and turned them into parts of itself. They offered us relocation first because they prefer to take over species that don't fight back. But they were always planning to do the same thing to us? President Carter studied the horrible images on the screen. How many species have they done this to? Based on the genetic samples we've recovered from the wreckage, at least 47 different species at various stages of integration. Some appear to have been part of the collective for hundreds of years. We found evidence that their original cultures, their languages, their entire histories have been erased. The implications were terrifying. Humanity wasn't just fighting for their freedom. They were fighting to keep their minds, their personalities, their very souls. The Council's offer of relocation to a farming world had been a lie from the very beginning. They had never intended to let humans remain human. Ma'am, Lieutenant Dan Murphy called from the communications station. We're receiving a new transmission from the approaching fleet. The message was different from the first one. The cold mechanical voice now sounded desperate and angry. Humans of Earth, your resistance has caused significant problems for Council operations. You have proven unsuitable for standard integration procedures. Immediate surrender is required, or we will be forced to implement complete species elimination. President Carter looked around the room at the faces of her advisors. Admiral Morrison, General Patricia Hughes, Dr. Stone, and dozens of others who had worked day and night to prepare for this moment. They had discovered something the Council never expected them to learn. They had found out what the aliens really wanted. The first battle taught us something important, said Admiral Morrison. These aliens fight like they've never faced real resistance before. They're used to species that give up quickly or agree to be absorbed into their collective without a fight. Dr. Stone pulled up more data on her computer. We've also learned how their technology works. The neural network that connects all the different species together is their greatest strength, but it might also be their greatest weakness. What do you mean? Asked the President. If we could disrupt that network, even temporarily, it might free the individual species to think for themselves again. For the first time in centuries, they might remember who they were before the Council took them. General Hughes looked at the tactical displays showing the approaching alien fleet. That's a big if, Doctor. How do we disrupt something we barely understand? We've been working on that, Dr. Stone replied. By studying the wreckage, we've learned how their neural interface technology works. We think we can build a device that broadcasts a signal specifically designed to interfere with those connections. The room fell silent as everyone understood what this meant. They weren't just planning to defend Earth anymore. They were planning to try to free every species that had been enslaved by the Council. How long do we have? President Carter asked. The alien fleet will reach Earth in 18 hours, reported Colonel Thompson. But we have an advantage this time. We know what they really are, and we know what they're afraid of. Which is what? Asked Admiral Morrison. Dr. Stone smiled for the first time in weeks. They're afraid of individuals who can think for themselves. Their entire system depends on everyone following the collective mind without question. The idea that someone might choose to resist, might choose to fight for their own identity, terrifies them. President Carter stood up and walked to the window that showed the underground parking garage. But in her mind, she was seeing the surface world where 8 billion people waited to learn their fate. They came here expecting to find another species they could easily absorb, she said. Instead, they found humans, and humans don't give up their identity to anyone. The president turned back to face the room. Begin preparations for Operation Liberation? We're not just going to defend Earth this time. We're going to free every species the Council has enslaved. Admiral Morrison nodded grimly. All stations. Prepare neural disruptor systems. Get every ship in position. We have one chance to do this right. As the orders went out to military units around the world, a new kind of preparation began. This wasn't just about weapons and tactics anymore. This was about striking at the very heart of what made the Galactic Council powerful. The aliens had made the mistake of thinking that resistance was impossible. They were about to learn that humans had built their entire civilization on the idea that freedom was worth fighting for. In 18 hours, the second battle would begin. But this time, humanity wouldn't just be fighting for Earth. They would be fighting for the right of every thinking being in the galaxy to choose their own destiny. The Council had sent a larger fleet expecting an easy victory. Instead, they were about to face something they had never encountered before, a species that refused to be absorbed and was willing to die to free others. The final battle began in the asteroid belt where humanity had spent 3 weeks, preparing the most ambitious military operation in their history. Captain Nina Torres commanded the flagship USS Freedom as she watched the Council vessels approach through the floating rocks and debris that orbited between Mars and Jupiter. All ships, this is Freedom Actual, she announced to the human fleet scattered throughout the asteroid field. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every species the Council has enslaved. Today we free the galaxy. The human strategy was completely different from anything the Council had faced before. Instead of meeting the aliens in open space, Earth's forces had turned the entire asteroid belt into a massive weapons platform. Hidden among the rocks, thousands of automated defense systems waited for the signal to activate. Dr. Alex Murphy monitored the battle from the Deep Space Observatory, tracking how the Council ships moved through the asteroid field. They're adapting faster than before, he reported to Earth Command. The collective mind is learning from our previous fights, but humanity had learned too. The past 3 weeks had seen breakthrough after breakthrough as Earth scientists studied the captured Council technology. The quantum communicators that had once seemed impossible were now standard equipment on every human vessel. Activate the neural disruptors? Ordered Admiral Jack Morrison from Earth Command. This was humanity's secret weapon, a device designed by Dr. Rachel Stone's team to interfere with the Council's collective consciousness. As the disruptors came online throughout the asteroid belt, something amazing happened on the Council ships. For the first time in centuries, individual voices began to speak. What is happening to me? The transmission came from one of the Council vessels, but the voice was different from before. It sounded confused, frightened, and completely non-human. Where am I? Who am I? This is Captain Torres of Earth Fleet, Nina responded immediately. You're free. The neural network has been disrupted. You can think for yourself again. Across the battle area, chaos erupted within the Council ranks. Ships began to slow down as their crews rediscovered what it meant to have their own thoughts. Some vessels continued to fight because their crews were too deeply connected to break free immediately, but others began to drift as their occupants struggled to remember who they had been before the collective took them. Lieutenant Commander Bill Adams led a squadron of fighters through the asteroid field, watching in amazement as one of the Council ships actually began sending surrender signals. Command, this is Razor Squadron. We have multiple Council vessels requesting protection. The battle raged for 18 hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Council's greatest strength, their unified mind, had become their greatest weakness when it was disrupted. As more ships fell silent or switched sides, the remaining vessels began a desperate retreat toward the outer edges of the solar system. But the real miracle was happening inside the freed Council ships. Species that had been enslaved for generations were remembering their own names, their own cultures, their own dreams. A fish-like creature called the Aquari remembered oceans on a world whose name had been forbidden for 300 years. An insect species called the Zephyr recalled building cities that reached toward the sky on a planet they thought they would never see again. "This is impossible," came a transmission from one of the retreating council ships. The voice was the old mechanical tone they had heard before. These species were integrated. Their individual consciousness was eliminated. This should not be possible. Captain Torres smiled as she watched more alien ships join the human fleet. "You made the same mistake twice. You thought that being stronger meant you could do whatever you wanted, but you never understood what freedom really means." President Helen Carter watched the final moments of the battle from the war room, surrounded by exhausted but victorious advisors. "Admiral, what's our current status?" "Ma'am, the Council fleet is in full retreat. We're receiving surrender requests from 68 vessels. Initial reports suggest we've freed representatives from at least 30 different species." Dr. Stone looked up from her analysis station where she was studying data from the freed ships. "The neural disruptors worked. Better than we ever hoped. We've not only broken the collective's control over this fleet, but we've given these species a chance to remember their own identities for the first time in centuries." As the last Council ship disappeared into hyperspace, Earth's deep space, monitoring stations began receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Word of humanity's victory was spreading, and species that had been thought lost forever were beginning to remember their own names. "Ma'am," reported Colonel Greg Thompson, "we're getting reports from our deep space monitors. It looks like the Council's retreat has triggered uprisings on multiple worlds. The collective is losing control throughout their territory." President Carter stood and looked out at the holographic display showing the solar system. Earth's sun seemed brighter somehow, and the stars no longer looked cold and distant. They looked like destinations waiting to be explored. "Then we've done more than just save Earth," she said quietly. "We've given the galaxy hope." Admiral Morrison nodded as he watched the displays showing freed alien ships joining human vessels in formation. "The Council sent us a threat demanding our surrender, but they didn't understand what they were dealing with. Humans don't just fight for themselves. We fight for what's right." The war was far from over. The Council still controlled vast regions of space, and Earth would need to help dozens of newly freed species rebuild their civilizations. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had something it hadn't known for generations. It had hope. Dr. Murphy reported from the deep space array that more and more worlds were breaking free from Council control. The neural disruptor technology was being copied and spread by the liberated species, freeing their homeworlds one by one. "It's like a chain reaction," he explained to Earth Command. "Every world that breaks free helps to free others. The Council's empire is collapsing." And it all started with a simple message from Earth. When the Council had demanded surrender, humanity had replied with 4 words that changed everything. "Come and take us." The species that had been deemed unsuitable for membership in the galactic community had not only refused to surrender, they had become the spark that lit the fire of liberation across the stars. The Council had wanted to erase humanity's defiance, but instead they had unleashed it upon the galaxy. In the end, Earth's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military power. It was the simple, stubborn human refusal to give up, to surrender, or to let others decide their fate. And that strength, it turned out, was exactly what the galaxy needed to be free.